The Wizard of Oz, he builds this incredible emerald city, which is a paradise that everyone lives in heaven. But no one really knows how anything works in the Emerald City. And people turn up to get their wishes granted. It's an incredible, remarkable thing that he's built.
Folks, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The great Oz has spoken.
Who are you?
Oh, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
So today we're going to be talking about how to reduce the cost of your MVP so that you can get your ideas launched faster without the need for an investor to say yes. You can start getting your first customers and still have money in the bank that you can continue to scale your idea towards product market fit. So how are we going to do that? First and foremost, we're going to talk about how you're going to reduce the cost of your MVP with minimalism and embracing minimalism. We're going to help you understand how you deliver the light bulb moment for your customers so that as you minimalize your minimum viable product, that you are able to deliver the value that they really need, that gets them excited, gets them recruiting your early adopters for you, and helps you start to scale towards product market fit. Then we're going to go into the power of low and no code tools and how these platforms give you an incredible opportunity to test your ideas and evolve them in a much shorter time frame with much less investment required from you up front, and will enable you to make sure that your ideas are worth investing in and reduce your risk so that you can make sure that you get a return on that investment. So how do you reduce the cost of your MVP through minimalism? First things I want to say is you have to embrace the mindset of deleting mercilessly. You are a founder whose sole job is to delete as much as possible from your MVP that you can get away with. And I speak with so many founders who are really deeply uncomfortable about this idea because they have such a big vision for what their product is going to become. Deleting half of this stuff feels like working their way backwards from where they've already got. It feels like they're not making progress. They're also really embarrassed about how rough and ready the MVP that we want them to build when they work with us is, because there's such a gap between that vision and what we're presenting. But here is the key mindset that you need to have. You are building for your first 5 customers, not your first million customers. This is really important to understand. As you work with a technical partner, your team of developers, an agency, or maybe you're even building this thing for yourself, you're going to come across this phenomenon here. Those teams that you work with are going to want to build your MVP in such a way that it can handle scale. But at this point in your business, you don't have scale. You don't have the problems of scale. You are trying to create a testable object that allows you to offer it to the market, see if it solves a real painful problem for your particular target customer, and see if we can get them to pay for it. We're trying to make our first £1,000 in this business. We're not trying to scale to the 5 million mark. So I want you to think about building this MVP in such a way that it can handle just 5 people using it, not 5 million. That means we're going to be able to do things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do, such as having no account creation process, enabling you to not have a button that allows you to reset your password, having no profile and account customization, because you can handle any queries and support issues that will come up with these first 5 early adopters. And that's actually going to be an advantage, not a hindrance for you. So I talk about this idea a lot here in the Minimal Viable Launch, and it's this notion of you doing your trench hours as a founder. And your trench hours are your unfair advantage. If you have really large competition in your marketplace, they have set their company up to avoid doing trench hours at all in any way, shape or form. So what are trench hours? Trench hours are the manual processes that you purposefully leave in your business that enable you to get down, get in the trenches with your customers, solving the problem, helping unstick them from their challenges and their issues. And in doing so, you get the unfair advantage of really learning what their pain points are, what they want, and why the current solutions in the market suck and don't provide that for them. Those big companies hate this idea because they now have a CFO, and the CFO will quickly point out, every time you manually onboard a customer, it costs us X amount of money, and that money could have been going onto the bottom line. And so slowly over time, as these companies grow, they build more and more distance between themselves and their customer. And you have an incredible ability as an early stage startup founder to be willing to do your trench hours, win your unfair advantage, get close to the customer, and innovate based on that knowledge. There's an incredible entrepreneur called Sam Ovens. He runs a school. His company does over 20 million a year at this point, I think. And he still maintains his ability to do trench hours because he speaks with his customers about the issues they're facing on the platform all the time. And he uses that as the rocket fuel for his innovation engine. And I think you can embrace this too. And it is a way in which you're going to enable yourself to reduce the cost of your MVP. The second way in which you can reduce the cost of your MVP is by being willing to be the man behind the curtain. I was thinking a lot about the Wizard of Oz film the other day as I was thinking about MVPs and how we do them here at the Minimal Viable Launch. We encourage founders to be in there doing things behind the scenes that seem automated, but in fact completely manual processes. And the analogy with the man behind the curtain, the wizard in the Wizard of Oz, is a really apt one, because the Wizard of Oz, he builds this incredible emerald city where it's a paradise that everyone lives in heaven, but no one really knows how anything works in the Emerald City. And people turn up to get their wishes granted. It's an incredible, remarkable thing that he's built.
Oh, pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. The great Oz has spoken.
Who are you?
Oh, I am the great and powerful Wizard of Oz.
But when Dorothy turns up and pulls back the curtain, what they see is one man who is absolutely at breaking point, pulling all these levers, switches, and gears, trying to keep the product going, trying to keep the illusion going. And actually, this is how we can build MVPs in such a way that enables you to dramatically reduce the cost. Because if you are willing to be a manual part of the process behind the scenes for these first 5 customers, not your first million, not your next 5 million, you are going to be able to cut out so much development work and effort that is required to deliver the problem-solving capability that your product is going to give to your early adopters. And I think about this, there was a podcast upload company who had an incredible rise to fame in which they solved the problem that you could upload your podcast file to them once and it would appear on Spotify, Apple, Google Play Store, and everywhere else that you'd want to put your podcast. Now, to build that as a fully automated service would have cost them years of development effort, millions of pounds in raising the team. So instead, they did something really clever. They created a simple file upload and they paid interns, recent graduates, to sit there and take that file, log into your account, and upload the file manually for you. From the eyes of their customer, this was absolutely magic because you uploaded once and it magically appeared across all of the platforms. You got the value that you wanted from the software. On their side, they managed to develop a product that was incredibly cheap to expand. The graduates didn't cost them a lot of money at all. And then they could use that knowledge and experience as a business case to go and raise money from investors to raise the team that they needed, to build the team that they needed to make this a fully automated process. So if you have the commitment to becoming the man behind the curtain in your MVP, you will be able to delete so many features and functionality from that MVP and therefore dramatically reducing the cost. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit here about what I call a Tom Newtonism. Tom Newton was one of my mentors in a really large SaaS business that I was a UX designer and product manager in. And Tom used to say this exact word: fix it when they scream, or I will fix that when someone screams at me. And this really confused me like at the start, because I thought, we have to build in these processes to make everything super automated and make sure nothing can go wrong from a customer. And actually what he pointed out is until someone experiences that problem, we usually can't even really be sure if that is going to be a problem people face with enough regularity that we can make a solid business case to put the time and effort and money into making that a fully guided, automated, and useful process. And I'm going to tell you a story at the end of this video about my mistake with this, where I nearly cost the company I was working for 6 figures in Amazon AWS credits and 6 months of development time, because I wanted to fix a problem that I was imagining in my head rather than the problem that actually was in reality. And I think more startups are killed by problems that are imagined in the founders and the development team's heads than the problems their customers actually encounter. And if you're willing to embrace this minimalism, if you're willing to delete relentlessly, mercilessly, if you're willing to be the man behind the curtain and leave problems that you think people are going to encounter to be fixed only at the point in which someone encounters the problem, you are going to have an incredible ability to reduce the cost of your MVP and therefore sidestep the need to raise investment, sidestep the need to spend 6 months building something, and you can get something live in a couple of weeks of making your first money. So all of this is encompassed in this idea of this is your hands-on startup. So many founders that I speak with are wanting to create a startup that is fully automated out of the gate. They don't want to interact with their customers. They don't want to do manual things. They miss out on the opportunity to learn and get very close to their customers by doing so. But importantly, in the context of this video of reducing the cost of your MVP, because they don't want to do any of these things, because they're unwilling to do their trench hours, the cost of their MVP balloons. And it gets to such a point in which they can no longer afford to self-finance that MVP, and they have to give away a ton of the equity in their business to agencies, contractors, or investors to raise those funds, and they end up spending 9 months raising investment rather than doing the thing they really wanted to do, which was build the product, make customers happy by solving their problems. So we want you to think about this as it's a benefit if you are hands-on in the early stages of this startup. This is the fun stuff where you get to roll your sleeves up and get scrappy and build out a remarkable product. Now, I'm going to tell you a story here about a conversation I was having with one of the members of the Minimal Viable Launch group. We were on a ski trip together last week with Daniel Priestley, absolutely incredible, learned a lot. This founder is building a product, but previously he existed as an airline pilot. And in his role as an airline pilot, he's got used to this way of doing things in which there is triple check checklists, standards, there are laws, legalities, and redundancies for absolutely everything they do, because the consequences of getting the airplane journey wrong for its passengers is pretty dire. We get this wrong, we go crashing and hurtling into the tarmac at 400 miles an hour, no one walks away from that. And he was struggling with this mindset shift that I was trying to make him go on, which is just get going, get building, move faster, move forward. Because he said, I don't want to start this until the plane is fully built. And I said, well, most startup founders are doing exactly that. We are finding a group of 5 customers who want to go on a white knuckle ride with us, who are suffering from a deep enough problem that they are willing to get on board a plane where not everything's finished. There's no luxuries and there's no comfort. And Seth Godin says about these people who we're looking for a lot in his material. He's an incredible marketing guru. He calls them the neophiliacs. These are the people who love the new. They love being on the edge and in the early adopters realm. We want to find these people because they want to get on board this plane before it's finished being built, so that they can have an active participation in shaping what this plane journey looks like, or what this vehicle we're building looks like, how it functions, what features it has. And so you need to be willing to get going much sooner than you think you're ready. This is how you're going to reduce the cost of your MVP, because you don't even know if you need double redundant wings on your plane at this point, if we're going to take this analogy further, right? The experience of flying the plane and trying to bolt everything together as you're going is going to give you a very clear indication of what's worth spending money on and what's absolutely not worth spending money on in terms of your MVP and the versions of your product soon after this. So get ready to build the plane whilst you're taking off. This is the fun of a startup. Unless you're working in a heavily regulated space, you're likely not going to kill anyone if you get your MVP wrong. So let's stop worrying, start building, present it to people and see what they think of it. The pushback I get on this is, well, if we don't automate, if I have to do all these trench hours, if we have to do all these manual processes, I'm going to be forever stuck in fulfillment, and we're building a software company because we want to scale. And I totally agree. So we use something called the automation matrix. After the MVP is built, we map everything on an X and Y axis. So on the X axis, between processes that are fast and easy to fulfill and those that are slow. And then on the Y axis, those that are high impact and low impact. And in the top right-hand corner, any processes which are low impact, that is to say that your customers value them little, they see them as table stakes functionality, and it doesn't enable you to get great face time in the trenches with your customers. Anything that's there and it takes you a long time to fulfill, we make a primary target for the immediate development on the roadmap just after the launch of this MVP. So this might be like your account creation process. You could do it for 5 people, you could probably do it for 50 people. But once you start getting past that, you don't want to be dealing with the resets and the account creation process, and it's pretty easy to do. Your customers don't value it massively because it's not really core functionality to what you do, it's just the expectation of how they get to get the value of what you do. That is how you can reduce the cost of your MVP massively, because you delay doing these things and then you systematically churn through them post-launch as long as they make sense for you to be doing in your business. I wanted to show you a little quote here of why I think so many startups die shortly after they launch their MVP. They create something, they spend all of their money in building an MVP that has all of the bells and whistles in it, and because they do that, they run out of cash, they run out of runway, if we're going to extend this plane analogy further, that they can't bend, twist and reform their direction based on the feedback from the market once they've launched. If they have no money, if they realize that their MVP is wrong or their understanding of the value they're going to deliver for their customers is slightly misaligned and they have to take on a pivot, they're in massive, massive amounts of risk because they've built a tree that's completely rigid. There's no money left in the bank to change things and to bend. And so when the market says no, the company eventually snaps under its own weight because it runs out of money. So even if you are in the most fortunate position where you could spend 6 figures on developing your MVP, please, for my sake, do not do that. Do not spend all of your money in launching your MVP. This is supposed to be a testable object that you're probably going to throw away multiple times because you are iterating and learning from your customers whilst you're in those trenches with them. We need resources left in the bank, and this is why I want you to delete Mercilessly and be willing to have manual processes remain within your MVP, because this is going to allow you to build a resilient, flexible and adaptable business that once you have launched your MVP will enable you to undertake the pivots that you need to undertake to really find true product market fit. And Uri Levine, in his book, Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution, talks about this idea of the desert of no traction. And the desert of no traction happens when you are just post-launch, and it is the 1,000 punches that you're going to get in the face where you are proven to be wrong about nearly absolutely everything that you thought about your customers, their wants and their needs, no matter how much you prep. On average, it takes startups about 24 months to find product market fit. So we need resources on the sidelines that you can deploy to continue to refine your idea, iterate until you find product market fit. And this is going to be a fact of life for you as a startup founder. I've never worked on an MVP that didn't need significant changes on it after we've launched it and we've learned a lot more about our customers. That's never happened. How do you deliver the light bulb moment? The light bulb moment is the core value of your product. We talked a couple of weeks ago about this idea of the validation journey you're going to be going on as a founder, which we'll get into in a second. But really, the light bulb is your understanding of the problem your customers are facing. When you allow them to experience the fact that your product solves a painful problem for them, they will have the light bulb go off in their head. They'll suddenly realize this product is for people like me and it solves my painful problem, and they'll do an amazing thing. They'll start to tell their peers about your software and recruit your other early adopters for you. So all of your money, all of your development effort, and all of your focus should be on refining an MVP that is directed at making this light bulb moment happen in your customer's head. So we talked about that validation journey, and where do you identify what that light bulb moment needs to be for your customers? So you started out at point number one. You saw a gap in the market, you saw a problem, and you went on this journey all the way down to the right where you started working with customers, validating your idea, learning about the problems, learning about the product and the process a little bit more. You got incredibly confused and frustrated. Things seemed super difficult. But then at some point you reached the bottom here where you gathered enough information, where you had a moment of revelation. And I always talk about this as this is like the light bulb moment in a conversation with a customer that you have, where suddenly it all makes sense. The problem that you are trying to solve is very, very clear in your head. And the way you solve it becomes very, very clear. And the way you can speak about it to your customers gets them super excited about it. This is like a lightning bolt through your head in which your conviction in starting this startup goes sky high because you can see the future. And I've talked about this, like this is the moment where you're like Neo and you can see the Matrix, right? So we need to get you to the point where you've had this revelation, because when you have the revelation, the light bulb moment is very, very clear. The light bulb moment then is focused around your understanding of the burning hair problem that your customers have. And we've talked so much about this in this group, which is the burning hair problem is based on a story. If your head was on fire and I'm holding a bucket of water, in that moment, I can pretty much charge you anything I want for you to be able to put your head in that bucket of water. And if your product isn't getting towards a burning hair problem, we're going to have massive struggles when you do launch because no one is going to care about it. And so people always push back on this and say, well, what problem does Facebook solve? Well, Facebook enables people to solve the problem of connection, social status, and many other problems in a really integrated way. And this is why it's such a huge platform. Things like Tinder, let's say, are solving the problem of people finding relationships. So we work a lot within the B2B space where this burning hair problem is usually very painfully obvious of what it is. But I guarantee you, any product that you're looking at in the marketplace is solving a problem somewhere along the line for someone. And that is why it exists at all. So with all of that said, you have to focus your development efforts on the core value of your product. This is the light bulb moment that you give your customers. You funnel all of the available resources that you've got to make that light bulb moment happen as powerfully as you can within their head and as quickly as possible. You're going to have all of these ideas for features and functionality that sit around in a tertiary manner around this core value. I want you to cross all of those out. Those are for later down the roadmap. Those are the things, these are the traps of the MVPs that just bloat your MVP, add cost and complexity, make you move slower, and get you to a point where you're going to have to go and raise investment to make this thing because it's going to cost so much. If you have to raise investment to build your MVP, I'm going to say, hands down, your MVP is too complicated. This should be something that is so minimum, so viable that you can self-fund it. By hook or by crook, you can get the money together to build this. Because I've built MVPs with free software and off-the-shelf components such as Google Sheets that we've scaled to £2 million in ARR, annual recurring revenue, in 12 months. So you can do it too. And I love this saying, simple scales, complex fails. If your product is going to take you a long time to build the MVP of, if your product is out of your reach personally, financially to get funded, it is because it is too complex. And this comes from this gap, the vision gap that we talked about earlier, where you're going to have such a strong vision for the amazing product that you're going to build in 5 years' time. And then you're going to work with someone like me who's going to challenge you to delete again and again and again. And it's going to become so simple, it's going to feel stupid. And you're going to be embarrassed about it, and you're not going to want to show this thing to people. But the simplicity is what enables you to move forward. you can build the complexity in over time in small, deliverable, understandable chunks. How do you move from being very complex to very simple? And it's this process of moving from thinking about features to thinking about the benefits that your customers are going to get from this product. On this very same trip that I talked to you about earlier, in which I was skiing with a load of incredible tech founders, I was having a conversation as I was swimming around the spa pool with one of these founders. They had an idea. They wanted to build a marketplace. They wanted to connect clients with service providers based on a deep analysis of that client's needs. So on the client's personality, the exact service requirements, and a bunch of other parameters. And they were saying to me, we need to build this app where we're going to have this marketplace. They're going to do the personality test. They're going to fill out all these questions. It's going to do this analysis, and then it's going to give them a match of 5 service providers that they can speak to that are going to be perfectly suited for what they need, which sounds amazing. But I was swimming around and thinking, well, why do we need to build an app? This founder, if we really focus on the benefit that these people get, is that they only have to have 5 conversations with service providers who are all deeply aligned with their wants and needs, rather than doing a Google search, getting hundreds of results and having to filter through really risky propositions where we don't know if we're going to partner with the right people. And when we focus on the benefit, we realized, and I explained as we were swimming around, that actually we could just do this with interviews of these customers, and this person could use their deep knowledge of these service providers to handpick 5 that this customer would interview. And then they would be able to make a connection. And if that was valuable, and if that happened in a repeatable way as their MVP, then we could have a conversation about how we would automate this with software and spend all of the money to do so. Think about the benefits that people are going to get from using your software, because if you're really benefit focused, you will be able to innovate in ways that you're not even capable of thinking of at the moment. Because at the minute, I guarantee you're thinking of specific features, but if you think of the benefit, there is a manual, low-cost, non-automated way that you can deliver that same value to your customers that's going to allow you to reduce the cost of your MVP. The power of low and no code. There is a huge revolution going on within the SaaS space, in the product development space. I, as a UX designer, was incredibly frustrated early on in my career because I would have all these incredible ideas for products, but I could never get them built because I wasn't technical enough and I didn't want to learn to code at that point in my life. I thought it was beyond my reach. But now with the advent of AI and low and no code, actually it's exceedingly easy to build prototypes of your idea within a couple of days, using off-the-shelf components, sticking things together in a rough manner to be able to build something that is high fidelity enough that you can show it to a potential customer, see if they get value from it, and ask for your first sales without risking your life savings investing in building a custom-coded MVP that no one wants. The way in which you're going to leverage this revolution is by building smart, not hard. So many founders I work with want to reinvent the wheel every single time because they're rebuilding the sign-up process from scratch. Even though this is a problem that has been solved thousands upon thousands upon thousands of times in the market, there is great solutions to this that we can just pull straight off the shelf and get it done. Don't reinvent the wheel. Instead, look at what's already out there. I've pulled this slide together for you of all these logos, and this is completely out of date. The pace of innovation within the no-code and low-code space is absolutely incredible. And you can see you can build websites, apps, you can build payment systems, you can automate workflow, you can do back-end stuff with Xano and have a really powerful database which you can create without having to write a single line of code. You can use spreadsheets on steroids with things like Airtable and create your own CRM system. There is incredible opportunity for even those of you who are not technical at all to leverage these off-the-shelf tools to put your idea together, give someone that light bulb moment. The pushback with no code that I always get is people say to me, well, we're going to have to throw this away at some point. And I'm going to say, if you get to the point of having to throw away your no code or low code solution, I'm going to pat you on the back and say, well done, you've made it. Because that's either going to mean that you have too much scale, too many people using your product, and it can no longer handle it, and in which case we can go and raise investment and say, look how many people are using this, look how many people are paying me for this. And we can have that investment conversation, which is completely different kettle of fish than raising investment because you think it sounds like a good idea. We can demonstrate traction and we can say, this is why we are raising exactly this amount of capital to do exactly this. That's an incredible place to be. Low code and no code is meant to be thrown away. You should hope you get to the point in which you throw it away, because at that point, we will have the resources internally within your business. If you've been listening to me and building a sustainable and profitable software business from the start, you will have the resources to solve that problem. I also want to encourage you, if you want to reduce the cost for your MVP, to ask the same question that Elon Musk does in all of his product companies, which is question the requirements because they are almost certainly dumb. This is where I've learned some really big lessons as a young product manager because I didn't question these requirements. Most of the time, no one has done the basic groundwork to ask the questions that they fear might make them sound a bit stupid to make sure that the assumptions that are built into this product use case are sound. And therefore, we get loads of complexity and cost built in for us. So I'm going to tell you a story of how I really messed this up when I first became a product manager. I was working at a big SaaS company where I was creating a data analytics product for schools. We had gone on a learning journey, a validation journey, had a moment of revelation, and I realized that we had built the wrong product. We created a version 2 and we scaled that version to £2 million in annual recurring revenue in just 12 months. But here's where we broke the company. The company wasn't able to handle that scale. That product version 1 was not able to run that many users for it profitably. So every user we added into the platform, we were losing more and more money. So I was getting very angry and very high pressure conversations from the exec team to say, we really need to sort this out, Lee. We're scaling a bit too fast and it might kill the company. So what did I do? We sat around, I called an emergency meeting with the development team. I said, this is a big problem. And they said, cool, we can migrate everyone onto this new version, which we can run profitably. But here's the problem. We have years worth of data built up from these customers that we need to transfer from version 1 to version 2. And we're going to have to build a custom data migration tool. And it's going to cost a lot of money in Amazon AWS credits to run these machines in the cloud to transform this data. Well, I was a young product manager. I hadn't been around this road before. And so I agreed. And we went on a 3-month journey of building a custom data analytics tool. In the meantime, I'm still getting all of these questions from the execs, more and more pressure. We're scaling faster and faster. We're losing more and more money. And so I called a second crisis meeting with the team and said, look, we really need to migrate people. Where are we at with this data migration tool? The tool was still not finished. And so I did something that I'm so glad I learned. I just started to ask the dumb questions. I asked for people's permission to say, I'm not technical. I'm not as clever as you. Let me be the dumb person in the room and just ask some questions. And if you can explain it to me like a layman, fine, we'll continue on. I can explain that back to the board. One of the first questions I asked is, has anyone validated with our customers how much of this data that we need to move? Because this is going to cost us a lot of money to do. And there were a lot of worried looks and glances around the room. And it turned out that no one had asked any customers how much data we should actually migrate for them, or whether they even access that data at all. So I put the whole project on hold, jumped on a call with 5 or 6 customers, and I asked them, how far back do you run your reports on your students' activity? And they said, well, once the data's more than 2 days old, we generally don't look at it. It's a pretty rare case because the data's too old, it's not really relevant anymore. So, with a big smile on my face, I run back to the team and say, good news, we don't need to migrate terabytes and terabytes and terabytes of data. We can actually get away with just doing 2 days, which turned out to be about a few hundred gigs worth of data instead. But then I asked another silly question. And I said, well, hang on a minute. School half term is coming up. What about if we just move no data, we wait until the school half term, and we switch everyone onto version 2 so that they start generating data in a new format, but because their students are off, no one's generating any data in that 7-day period. Again, worried looks around the room. It seems to be a logical plan. We go ahead and execute it. So we transferred every customer over to the new system. We avoided having to run any cloud migration services, so we didn't spend any money on the Amazon AWS credits. And we stopped the development of that migration tool. And we never ever had, if we go back to that Tom Newtonism, no one ever screamed about the problem of not being able to access their historic data. And what we said is, if anyone ever does scream about it, we manually will go into the old system, we'll pull that data out, we'll bundle that into a lovely report for them, and they'll be happy. And so I want you to be able to question the requirements of your MVP, because I can guarantee you there are things in there that are adding to that complexity, and the more complex your MVP is, the more it's going to cost. The slower you're going to go, and conversely, the more difficult it's going to be to get someone to buy that MVP from you. You need to simplify, and you simplify by questioning those requirements. So, how are you going to reduce the cost of your MVP by 10x? Remember, you're building for 5 people, 5 customers, not 5 million. Strip out everything that is not core to the value your product provides. That light bulb moment is all important. Delete, delete, delete. Be the man behind the curtain. Be the person willing to do the manual automation. And you're going to serve yourself really well. You're going to embrace that minimalism, deliver that light bulb moment, and you're going to use low and no code tools, off-the-shelf components that you're going to stick together in a really scrappy way that's going to enable you to reduce the cost of that MVP by 10x.